Sorry.
Well,
No, go ahead, council member.
so Amy, I know we got to catch up a little bit earlier, so I'll go ahead and just kick us off. And while this is Amy's meeting to run, I wanted to make sure just to level set with just some information. So one thing is a couple of times for the last couple of years, I've had folks reach out with concerns for safety on their streets. And so one of the programs that exists is hosted through NDOT, the Nashville Department of Transportation, and through our previous mayor, we actually set up a separate department. So NDOT has a separate department outside of Metro Water Services. So with that, we were able to really fully realize what a Nashville Department of Transportation looks like. And one of those things is a traffic calming program. So that's wonderful about this is actually a program that is initiated by people who live on the streets, right? So live on that neighborhood street who applies for the program. So for the last couple of years, I've hosted a couple of 101s, which is more informational sessions. And so that's how Barry and some other neighbors and I got to know each other that live on Estes. And I know that there are more people that live on Estes that are probably a part of this, but they for tonight. But the beautiful thing is they'll continue to be notified. So your neighbors apply for a program that addresses speeding or dangerous behavior on streets because they're concerned. And through that, NDOT has established this program. And so many folks either absolutely are crying to have that traffic calming, which often looks like speed cushions, which can be the bane of so many people's existence, or they are absolutely opposed. So what I ask people to do when we do these calls is just to come to this in a way that is as listening to each other as possible. You can put things in the chat. I will make sure, Amy, I don't think you're supported by any other staff. So we'll make sure, I'll go through and make sure those questions are answered or asked and answered by you. So you don't have to do all the monitoring. But really it's listening to Amy to talk through what the program is, what the proposal, they always bring an initial proposal. And then talk through how that decision process is made. And that is by voting, and she'll walk through all of those details of the voting. And that voting is made by the decision makers are the people who own properties along Estes and Estes along between Woodmont and Woodlawn. And so those will be the people that are really the decision makers because they're the caretakers of that street. What's wonderful, we've also had some feedback, and Amy, I was talking to you briefly that looking at how we address the parking at Woodmont and some other areas. So when I took a quick glimpse of the plan that we're going to hear later, I think there's going to be some other things I'd love for you to be able to present as possibilities, which is signal lights, flashing, the ways that we walk, and then Belle and hopefully some other members of the neighborhood association as well. And I are going to work with the Parks Department, who's also responded to talk through what are the parking options, which are limited at Woodmont Park because we only have so much metro land there, but try to walk that area and understand more things that we might be able to do there. So I think, over the course of the next couple of weeks and hopefully into before the end of the first quarter of this year, we'll hear from everyone that has a concern and really bring forward solutions that work for everyone and not just a few. But that's one of the things I always like to kind of share with folks. I've been on a few of these now, and so folks often get very passionate because everyone cares. And that's a really good thing to remember, how much we care about this space and place. And so with that, I want to turn it over to Amy but also thank our neighbors who have taken the time to make this application. Estes was actually ranked number 1 twice a year. NDOT awards programs that neighbors have applied countywide to address speeding. through a traffic calming program. And so Estes was ranked #1 out of concern countywide in the fall of last year. And so now we're just now starting. And the reason we are meeting tonight is I prioritize the applicants and the neighbors who live on Estes of what date that they were available to kick off our meeting. So we can always look at the rescheduled for the scheduling for the second meeting. We can kind of do broader. And if we need a follow-up meeting from there, that's something that Amy will work with us as well. So with that, I will turn that over to Amy, but I think that's kind of helpful overall to kind of just think about where we are and why we're here as you kind of walk through what the program is and how those decisions get made and what proposals you're going to be bringing to us, which I will guarantee there's always input and there's feedback, and it doesn't mean that one thing is happening. So this will be our time to kind of give that feedback after that proposal. But Amy, if there's times you want engagement, I'll let you lead that and I'll just monitor the chat.
Thank you, Council Member. I appreciate that. Yes, I'm Amy Birch. I'm a traffic engineer and consultant that works with NDOT to help facilitate the Neighborhood Street Traffic Calming Program, and we're here to talk about Estes Road. So thank you all for giving us some of your evening to learn about the program and the project and provide feedback. It's really important to make it successful. So we're going to talk about our agenda, but just I guess some house rules. We do have a chat box. You're welcome to use that. Like Councilmember said, she'll help me monitor that and we'll get all those questions answered. You can also unmute yourself and ask questions as we go along if you would like. Just try to stay muted while we go through so we don't have feedback noise that disrupts. Like we started earlier, this meeting is being recorded, and that's so that if anyone misses it, we have this information posted online and it's easily accessed. So we're going to talk about the program overview. Then we're going to talk about some of the data points and issues on your street and how it got selected. Then we're going to talk about the traffic calming toolbox that NDOT has to implement different tactics and materials to slow speeding. And then we have prepared a preliminary design concept for Estes Road. It's very preliminary. It's high level concept meant to show what we think is feasible at a high level and as a tool to get feedback from the community on the plan. So it's a starting point, and like Councilmember said, we'll probably have a second meeting to discuss more details and tweaks to the plan, but we want to have something to sort of start with. And then we will discuss the project next steps and the program next steps. I do want to point you to the Engage Nashville page that NDOT uses for all of the traffic calming projects. The QR code there, or it's engage.Nashville.gov /traffic calming. And so we have a project page for all of our projects that they're in the process, and that's a place where you can provide direct feedback about Estes Road and also learn more about the project and the status and where it is in the program process. So and I'll show this later again at the end of our slides. So let's talk about traffic calming. What is it? The Neighborhood Street Traffic Calming Program focuses on residential streets, similar or like Estes Road. And so what we're doing with that is physical solutions that encourage lower speeds over the length of the street, and we're really targeting vehicular speed through this. Our 3 E's of traffic calming: education. We do a lot of education through social media. NDOT does a lot of social media engagement and education, as well as all of the meetings that we have for each individual street. You're learning stuff about speeding and traffic calming and so forth. Then there's enforcement. That is the job that our NDOT's partners, the police department, does. And they are certainly partners in the goals of reducing speeding across the city, but the police cannot enforce speed control across all the cities 24 hours, or all the streets 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so engineering is the part that NDOT mainly focuses on, and that is how do we modify the design and character of the street to encourage drivers to drive at a slow, appropriate speed. So one of the main reasons we're doing this is for safety, and NDOT's commitment to Vision Zero. So to illustrate that, I've got this graphic here that is showing the correlation between speeding and a pedestrian's chance of survival if hit by a vehicle. And so on the left side, if a vehicle is going 25 miles per hour, a pedestrian has an 89% chance of survival. And then as speed goes up to 35 miles per hour, the pedestrian's chance of survival goes down to 68%. And then at 45 miles per hour, the pedestrian's chance of survival goes down to 35%. So it's really easy to see the direct correlation between speed and safety and a pedestrian's chance of survival. I think that's pretty well understood. But another thing about speeding is that as a driver, you have a wider cone of vision at a slower speed, so you can see and anticipate, you know, another vehicle or a pedestrian entering the street that you would need to avoid or something like that. And so that is an advantage of slower speed, driver speed. And then also at a slower speed, you have a greater reaction time. So if something does enter the roadway as you're driving, you have longer time to react, slow down, and avoid the collision altogether. So those are some great reasons to drive a slow, appropriate speed on residential streets and all streets, but we're specifically talking about residential streets here. So like Councilmember said, this is an application-based program. And so residents get together and apply for traffic calming on their street. There are 2 times a year in which NDOT selects streets for the traffic calming program. It's usually in the spring and in the fall. And so this was a fall 2025 selection. And it is Estes Road is one of 25 neighborhood streets that was selected out of what we have now is approximately 700 neighborhood streets that have applied for traffic calming in Nashville. This map on the right of the screen is taken from our live traffic calming tracker map. It's posted on NDOT's website, and it represents, you know, all the projects and streets that have applied for traffic calming and essentially where they are in the program. It's color coded and so forth. So you can zoom in on these streets, click on it, and find out, you know, whether the street's been applied for, or and you know, if it's in the balloting phase, which we'll go over later, or if traffic calming's been installed and so forth. And then outside of the traffic calming program, we always like to plug the Hub, Hub Nashville. It's a great resource that Metro government has that connects residents and citizens to Metro services and Metro departments to get any issues you have either resolved or answered and so forth. So it's really one-stop shop for Metro. It's not just NDOT, it's, you know, it's water services and NES and all of that that you can call 311. You can also submit a hub request online by using hub.Nashville.gov. And there's an app you can download onto your smartphone and submit requests that way, but also assigns a request number, a service number that you can follow up on if needed. So it's just a really great resource for to reach the right services in Nashville. And so now let's go back to the traffic calming program. So I want to talk about how we go from 700 streets that are asking for traffic calming to 25 streets that are selected twice per year. We have a data-driven process, and we look at 5 criteria for every street that has applied. And then those that score the highest are the ones that are selected for traffic calming in that round. So we look at the vehicle speed. We go out and we measure the speed on the street, and that's worth 45% of the score. We also collect the volume data. That's worth 25% of the score, so the total daily traffic volume for the street. We also look at non-driver accommodations. So are sidewalks missing on the street? Are there bike lanes on the street, or greenways nearby, bus routes on the street or nearby? That's worth 15% of the score. Then we also look at the vulnerable user and injuries and fatalities. So that's essentially pedestrian and bicycle crashes that have occurred on the street over the last 10 years, and that's worth 10% of the score. And then the last 5% are trip destinations, so nearby places where we would expect people to be walking to and from, that would attract people from the neighborhood street to that destination. So that's parks, community centers, libraries, schools, and so forth. And that's, again, 5% of the score. So it's 100-point score, essentially. And like I said, those that scored highest are the ones that are selected for the traffic calming in that round. So Estes Road, like council member mentioned earlier, was selected and was the #1 ranked street for traffic calming in this round. So I want to talk about some of the data points, because you're probably interested in knowing, well, what triggered your street to be selected. And we are specifically talking about Estes Road between Woodlawn Drive and Woodmont Boulevard, so that northern section of the street. So when we collected the speed data, we measured the 85th percentile speed to be 37 miles per hour. And I want to explain that data point. 85th percentile speed is the speed that 85% of the cars are going that speed or below over the course of a 24-hour day. So we measured 85% of the traffic going 37 miles per hour or below. It means that 15% of the traffic is going above 37 miles per hour. So we do have, some of those outliers there. And this is a metric that we traffic engineers often reference. It gives us a good understanding and feeling of what the speeding conditions are on the street. So that's why we reference it. The volume we measured to be about 3,500 vehicles per day. That's the two-way volume, so both directions of traffic, and we measure that somewhere in the middle point of our segment of street. Then, of course, you have about 11-foot lanes, and that's marked with the edge lines and the center lines on the street, the yellow center lines. We have some sidewalk, which is great on Estes Road, but it is not a complete sidewalk network. There's only portions of sidewalk, mostly, I think, only on the west side of the street, on the south end, towards Woodmont. It does provide some connectivity in that to the park there. And this street is classified as a collector avenue street, which is kind of a mid-tier level of street. This map is showing our project limits, and this is taken directly from our online tracker map. And so this street is in the meeting and design phase, you see at the bottom left here. And we're talking about, again, from Woodmont to Woodlawn. And you can see there are other streets that have applied for traffic calming, the Kenner and Woodmont, although Kenner kind of has the chicanes on it. But there's been an application received for this street. Woodlawn Drive has been in the program and completed the project on Woodlawn already. So, and then there's some other streets to the south that have applied but not been selected yet. So I'm going to talk about our toolkit, the tools that we use to achieve slower speeds. Speed cushions is the tool used most often. A lot of time, and I think that's because it's really effective when we implement these. They get the job done. A lot of times when residents apply for traffic calming, this is kind of the thing that they have in mind. But it's not the only tool that we use. We have many other tools that I'm going to talk about, but I'm going to talk about this one first because you probably experienced them in Nashville on a number of streets as you move around town. And so these are modular rubber devices that are drilled into the pavement. And as you can see from these pictures, we can form them into a different number of configurations depending on how wide the street is, what the pavement markings are on the street already, whether there's bike lanes or not, and so forth. But when we install them, they will come accompanied with a warning sign next to it to alert drivers of the speed cushion as they approach. They have pavement markings on them that help you to see them at night as well. And then when we install them, we'll typically put them in a series of cushion sets, and they're typically spaced anywhere from 300 to 600 feet apart. And that is so that, drivers maintain a consistent speed as they drive along the length of the street. If we install one set of cushions in the middle of the street and no others, then drivers are not going to necessarily keep their speed low. They may, try to make up speed after the cushion if there's not another one, somewhere in the distance that they can see or know that they're approaching. So we'll put them in a series so that we get kind of a consistent speed along the length of the street. We're really targeting that 25 miles per hour. So at their highest point, they're 3 inches high, and they're 6 feet wide, these cushions. And then as they lay in the road, you can see in these pictures that they create these gaps between, and that accommodates emergency vehicle response vehicles better, because those vehicles have a slightly wider wheel base than a passenger car, SUV, or even a pickup truck. And so those emergency vehicles can straddle these cushions a little bit, and so they're not as affected by the vertical measure installed in the street. And then we have in the bottom right, you can see we have a bike lane that's on this street where speed cushions have been installed. It doesn't have a buffer with it, but we've installed these white delineator posts that I'm sure you've seen in places, and that is to keep drivers from trying to go around the cushion into the bike lane and impacting the bike lane. So trying to protect that bike lane there. And then when another point about these is when we install them, we pay attention to where the driveways are. We're not installing these at the back of the driveway so that you're turning, kind of sideways across them in order to enter or exit your driveway. So we're spacing those an absolute minimum of 10 feet from a driveway, but our goal is a minimum of 15 feet. Sometimes in urban settings, when we have multiple driveways, that can be a little challenging, but we're looking at that and we're making sure that we're not making it more difficult for you to get in and out of your driveway driving sideways across them. Okay, speed tables are made out of the same material, but they are formed in a different way across the width of the street, so they stretch the whole width of the street instead of having those gaps like you saw on the speed cushions. We use these less often because we don't want to cause additional delay for emergency vehicles. So these are less often, but they do have their place in sometimes. Same material, markings, signs, all very similar. And NDOT has done some before and after studies of installations of speed cushions across the city, and found that they are very effective in achieving our goals of slowing speeds. We studied 6 streets, and the graph on the left is showing an average speed comparison before and after the speed cushions were installed. The before speed was 31 miles per hour, and then after the speed cushions were installed, the average speed went down to 22 miles per hour. And then on the right is the 85th percentile speed comparison. The before speed was 37 miles per hour, and then the after speed was 25 miles per hour. So very effective in helping us reach these goals. We also use radar feedback signs quite a bit. You've probably seen them in a number of streets around Green Hills and elsewhere. These are signs that show a driver their speed as they approach the sign. And it's a reminder for drivers. Some drivers, they just don't realize how fast they're going, and that puts it in their view, and they slow down. And so we've seen some effective results here as well using this tool, seeing the average speed go down by 6 miles per hour, and the 85th percentile speed go down about 7 miles per hour. And these are often used in places where maybe vertical measures aren't desired or not possible to be installed. We aren't able to install vertical measures on steep hills or in tight curves. So sometimes these tools are best to install the radar feedback signs in those locations. Street narrowing. Sometimes we have residential streets that are they're wide, and it just feels very open for drivers, and that encourages some speeding. So we've implemented edge lines to narrow the travel way. This can also create a little bit of a shoulder for pedestrians, increase their comfort for pedestrians. And then we're also doing what we're calling slow, safer shoulders. And so this is another narrowing tactic, but it's a little bit more pronounced and protected for pedestrians to use the edge of the roadway where the width is wide enough. And so we do that by incorporating some striping as well as the delineator posts to dedicate that zone for pedestrians. So, again, we have to have the right amount of width in order to implement this, but it can provide that extra space and safety for pedestrians. Can also have some impact to on-street parking, of course, in certain places. So, we always want to talk with communities about that option before doing it. Okay, bulb outs are a intersection tool that's used to essentially tighten an intersection. Sometimes we've got intersections that were designed ages ago and they're just too big and not necessary for turning movement. So this reduces the speed of turning maneuvers. It can increase visibility for drivers and pedestrians. It can narrow the crossing distance for pedestrians by just striping out some of that excess pavement width with paint and using delineator posts like those white ones that we talked about earlier, or we're also incorporating in that top right corner these little speed bumps, and that's only in the shoulder area, not in the driving area, but that can keep drivers from speeding, going around and using that excess pavement. These are usually incorporated more in urban areas, but can have some uses elsewhere when the conditions are right. Chicanes is a tool used. We have to have all the right conditions for this kind of treatment, the right width and so forth. But essentially what we're doing is taking a straight street and adding some horizontal curvature and deflection so that drivers have to kind of divert their straight path of travel to stay in their lane, and that causes them to slow down. In this case, it's done with the on-street parking alternating side to side. I think Kenner has this treatment, which is nearby you all, so you're probably familiar with how that works. Pinch points is a tool we're using. I believe this pictures a street in East Nashville, but essentially adding some islands that takes the street from two-way travel to one-way, and so approaching traffic in opposite directions has to yield to each other as they pass through this point in the street. And certain volumes of traffic, it's not appropriate, and classifications of street, it's not appropriate. I'll say that I don't think that this is something we could do on on Estes Road, but it is something that may be more appropriate on smaller residential streets with speeding. And then traffic circles, another tool that's used. This design layout is rubberized curb installed with asphalt backfill. Essentially, these are intersection islands that are installed in the middle of the intersection, central islands, very similar to roundabouts where you travel counterclockwise around them. And it slows traffic down as they pass through the intersection because they have to, divert around this central island. The intersection needs to be wide enough to fit this in, so it's not always a tool that we can use on every street, but we have used them in the past. So that's the end of our toolbox, and I don't see any messages in the chat. So I think I'll move on to our next slide, which is our proposed plan for Estes Road.
Amy, I
Again,
think we had a couple of folks that may have joined after you started.
mm-hmm.
So before we go into the proposed plan, I just wanted to recap some of the things you covered. One thing is, how did we get here? We got here because NDOT offers a traffic calming program. We offer that, NDOT offers that to neighbors who live and reside and own property on neighborhood streets, and they apply for that program. And then the streets are then evaluated, which is what Amy was going over at the beginning. And then they look through the tools they have, and we have initial meetings with the neighborhood as a whole, but also those property owners who own property and reside on the street which they've applied for. Twice a year, NDOT awards or is able to grant the resources towards those neighborhood streets. And so Estes was approved in the fall of 2025 as one of the 25 streets that were selected countywide. And so it took us a little while to get something scheduled. And we prioritized tonight's date due to the folks that live on Estes and their availability. This will not be the only meeting, but NDOT does, their engineer and Amy does come forward with a proposed plan. This typically involves speed cushions. And if you live on that street and you've applied for the program, you are looking for anything you can to slow traffic. If you are, and so you're probably excited about that. If you are one of us that lives nearby and the bane of your existence is a speed cushion, you are going to absolutely oppose that. So I attend a lot of these meetings, but I just wanted to remind everyone to take the proposal as one where you're able to give feedback, ask questions, and we will also have a follow-up meeting. And remember, everyone's coming here with the number one thing is that they care, and they care deeply. So I find that very necessary just to remind and ground us as we move into the next part of the conversation. And then I believe Mr. Mahler has his hand raised, so we can probably ask a question and then turn it over to you. But if you joined late, I just wanted to make sure we kind of reground. This meeting is being recorded. It will be available in a link that I will also send out, but it'll be on the website that I have linked in the chat. So anyone can go back and watch that. And then I can always send follow-up information as well. So Amy, if we can recognize Mr. Mahler and then go into the next slide, I just want to make sure we got some people joining late, that I want to make sure we take a moment there.
Sounds great. Yes. What's your question? Thank you, council member.
Hi, thank you. I'm Mark Miller. I live on a corner of Woodlawn, and so appreciate the interest in the objectives of safety and speed control to appropriate speeds. I just want to make sure, in the interest of time, that we bridge from the very informative presentation, the great information that you shared with us, Amy, to bridge to a proposed solution of traffic calming, to consider the particular situation on circumstances on Estes, which actually Val Newton has summarized very nicely, and consider what alternatives are considered before we commit to a particular solution. We have a situation where a solution is proposed that affects 100% of people for a problem for which 15% of the vehicles have presented problems, and certainly the impact of these speed cushions, the major impact that they have, according to the literature, is to divert traffic to other places, and then they certainly do affect speed, but also cause inconvenience for drivers and place additional loads elsewhere, and the impact on injuries tends not to be measured there. I just want to make sure that at some point in our meetings together, or preferably today, that we have some opportunity to consider alternatives such as sidewalks, which would seem to be first and foremost need. Also, the database police surveillance. You have data on speeding, so clearly police surveillance during times of peak speeding can be helpful. We know that police surveillance is helpful. You've also provided data that cameras can be helpful with the visual feedback. There are a host of things which can be done to achieve objectives of safety and to reduce speeding. We're about to get to the point that what are we going to do with implementation of traffic calming? And so the question is, as a neighborhood that includes people who live on Estes, it includes a whole bunch of people who use Estes who don't live on Estes, who share the same objectives of having appropriate speeds and certainly preventing injuries. What alternatives would be practical, feasible, and applicable to the situation on Estes that would avoid the disruption to the 85% of law-abiding neighbors?
Wonderful. And I can also jump in and talk about the police policing of neighborhood streets for traffic calming. As folks probably on this call are aware, that you don't see police out or MMPD out very often on neighborhood streets. That is a Chief Drake and how they strategically work with the precincts. But every time we do send something over to the West Precinct Commander to monitor neighborhoods, they are incredibly responsive. So I do think that is something we'll continue to lift up to Commander Proctor at West Precinct, who monitors not only the West Precinct, who is, and we're in great fortune to have the West Precinct fully staffed. So that is something we can continue to do. That's likely outside of the NDOT purview for what they're doing, but that is something we absolutely need to lift up, as well as wonderfully Bell has lifted up to make sure we're addressing parking along Woodmont. And so specifically about Woodmont Park is what I mean. So working with Joe Stovall over there to make sure we get a meeting, and then we'll make sure anyone who's able to able to join us to walk through the options there for the park, as well as the sidewalk program. Unfortunately, I'm sure people here are aware, the city was sued on our sidewalk funding. So the way we get our sidewalk funding for a few years ago is through general dollars that get contributed. So every year, all of us submit dollar requests for sidewalks, and NDOT is looking at continuing to update the updated sidewalk plan. So one thing as a follow-up, I'll encourage people to continue to put hub requests in as I do every few months. I go through all our lists to continue to request for sidewalks. So those things, as well as this section of street to countywide for looking at funding of sidewalks, is something we'll continue to do. Unfortunately, the NDOT, this particular traffic calming program that NDOT doesn't fund sidewalks through it. It looks at other measures. Amy can walk through that more aptly, but that is just the reality for this particular program that your neighbors applied for. But I just wanted to kind of touch base on a couple of those elements. They are all incredibly important and all need to be addressed. And I think as you walk through the proposal here, making sure you listen to Mr. Mahler, Bell, others who have shared information to revise any plans that you do have proposed there, I think will be really incredibly important. But I do want to, just because those are kind of out of the scope of this particular program, I wanted to take a moment to address as well.
Brent, I don't know how to get in the chat box, but can you hear me?
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful.
If you couldn't, it'd be the first time in my life that I was not being heard. There's a three-way stop at the corner of Woodlawn and Estes. There is a stop light at the corner of Woodmont and Estes. So people have to slow down when unless the lights go, when they're approaching the stoplight, and certainly when they're approaching the three-way stop sign at Estes and Woodlawn, which leads me to believe that the area of concern are not those corners, not the south corner, not the north corner, but the area in between. And as we've discussed, and you know my opinion, I applaud this. I think we're all about safety in the neighborhood. As I've shared, I've been here since '83, and I can guarantee you where the most speeding is going on is right outside here on Montgomery Bell Avenue by the NBA boys. We've had this post knocked down twice. But I think it's important. We can't leave this conversation, because if these speed bumps, speed cushions, or whatever gets implemented, until the design flaw of the parking lot at Woodmont Park is addressed, I don't care if a car is going 5 miles an hour. If a toddler gets away from his parents or caretaker in that parking lot, it's going to be a tragedy if they're going 5 miles an hour. The speed limit that's posted there is 25. So I think this is a Band-Aid to the real issue, is the cars that are parked there, not enough sidewalks. Then people are going to divert and go to Woodmont Circle and Clearview to avoid the speed bumps. They're going to go on Wilson. And I think the bigger issue before we make any kind of decision is this whole problem that exists really needs to be looked at.
And the problem of the Woodmont Park parking situation and the access for children leaving the park, is that right?
parking lot, and just the whole, the parking on Estes, you know, by the
Parking on
park.
Estes
The
as
park,
well
the
as
parking, the parking on Woodmont Circle by the park, the parking, I mean, it's the whole issue of the design of the parking for the park
yeah.
and pedestrian egress and ingress needs to be looked at, or we're putting a Band-Aid on this.
And that was one thing I wanted to address too. And one of the reasons I had reached out to you about us meeting with the park staff there, because they're the ones that will address the park ingress and egress, as well as kind of incorporating that in this conversation here. So hopefully we'll have some dates from Director Stovall, get those with you that works for your calendar, Belle, and anyone else that wants to join us. But also making sure that Amy hears that and the reflection here that ingress and egress, as Belle's talking through, as you move into that next part, Amy, making sure you're able to fully address that of where those key points that she's talking about. And what you do around that, whether that's safety walking measures that you've lifted up. I think those are incredibly critical points. So I'm really appreciative. Thank you so much, Belle, for lifting those up and make sure we don't leave this conversation from our vendor here for addressing that. What hopefully gets incorporated in that next part. And I do know I'm always sensitive to knowing that different departments are taking care of different things. So that's why I continue to lift up about making sure we ensure that what those things are, that we're working directly with the Parks Department as well, and we will. But thank you so much.
I think we have another hand raised from Craig and Diane. You want to unmute and ask that question? Okay. Hearing none, maybe we'll move forward and then come back to that. So I appreciate all the feedback and information that's helpful as we move forward. And I just want to state that, you know, we've put together a concept plan for a point to begin conversation with you all about what to do on Estes Road. So we have looked at the street and the data and feel that a plan of speed cushions is feasible here, and you know, looked at the spacing and tried to implement our typical spacing right around 400 feet or so. It looks like it's some are a little bit longer and some are a little narrower, but let me orient you and then we can go in with questions and more details. But north is to the right of your screen. So I've marked the all-way stop at Woodlawn at the right of your screen. And then these trapezoids represent our speed cushion approximate locations and spacing. So you can kind of see that on the aerial. And then as you move south, I've marked the Woodmont Park and the you know, location of the March crosswalk on Estes Road, and then another 2 sets of cushions as you go further south, and I've marked the traffic signal at Woodmont Boulevard. So that's kind of to orient you. So you know, it looks like we've got 7 sets of cushions called out. They would kind of lay in the road similar to this
Looks good to me.
image here in the top. You know, we've marked them with the signs, of course. There's some special treatments we would, you know, if this is the plan we move forward with, that we would incorporate around the park, specifically where the on-street parking is along Estes Road to one, keep drivers from trying to go around the cushions and into the parking area. You know, we want to make sure that people stay in their lane as they drive around or drive through Estes Road. We try to strategically place these cushions in advance of the markings that are already present to alert drivers that they are approaching a crosswalk, the rumble strips, and the ped markings as they approach the crosswalk from both sides. I think those are some really important locations for those cushions. So you slow down to go over the cushions, and you see the rumble strips and then the crosswalk as you go in either direction. So that is you know, kind of a summary of the plan, and you can see it here. maybe I'll just pause for questions. We're still, of course, making sure that we're looking at driveway locations and so forth. So,
And I think we have,
yes, we have a question
yeah, I think
from
we have Mr. and
Craig
Miss
and Diane.
Sussman that's
I have a
also raised their
question.
hand. Oh, is that Mr. Wilker?
Yes.
Okay.
Could we have
Uh,
a raised sidewalk in the middle of Estes by the park, like they've just put it
1
at
second.
Harpeth Hall
Oh,
and at the corner of Linwood and Tyne, where when one crosses the road, there's a slightly raised part of the road?
mhm. A raised crosswalk is typically what we call them, and that's something we could look at. There are a few of those locations in Metro Nashville elsewhere, so that's something we could look at. Thank you for that input.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Sussman. I think you're muted. Let me see if I can unmute you. Mr. Sussman, I think you're muted. Are you able to unmute yourself?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
So, in support of what Belle has said, are we really accomplishing our true goal by changing the average traffic speed from 37 to 25 in that section? The other thing is, what is our goal? Our goal is to protect the children and pedestrians near Woodmont Park. And we don't need seven things to slow the traffic. We can take the amount of money it takes for those 7, and we could create a crosswalk that would have flashing lights when people enter the crosswalk. I mean, we've all seen this. Somebody mentioned they saw it in Denver. I've seen it in Marco Island. It works very effectively when you want to cross Collins Avenue to get to the beach.
And
the light goes on and the pedestrian has to stop, and they do.
well, that's the purpose of tonight, is for you to bring that suggestion forward, which is wonderful. And I think Mr. Levine Rory has also put in there about improving safety using the crosswalk. Can you walk through about adding that as an addition through that safety crosswalk, as Mr. Sussman and Ms. Bell and Rory has lifted up too? And also addressing, I think, what some of the concerns, I don't know, I know some of the folks who maybe not are property owners on Estes, but the neighboring area also, kind of concerned with the number of speed cushions. So looking at that alternatives, and Mr. Sussman earlier, we'll make sure we send this recording out, as I said earlier. So you'll be able to see some of the other additional tools that are in that program. So can you address that, Amy?
Yes.
Thank
That's certainly a location and area of the street that I think we have the most focus on, because we know that the crosswalk is used, and we want to make sure that pedestrians can cross safely there. If you are talking about a signal overhead the road that flashes to stop the vehicular traffic, to allow pedestrians to cross when they are present, and push the button. That is something NDOT can look at. I'm not sure if it would fall within this program, but I will take it back to others and come back with an answer in our next meeting. But that may be something that's higher capital cost and so forth.
One thing we were
But
able
it's
to do,
certainly
Amy,
an idea.
Amy, I
to
think
look
for
at.
the Richland, and I think you're going to see comments that aren't surprising to see, is like the number of those speed cushions. And you'll see those comments here, and it's not surprising. Every time I participate in one of the traffic calming, the number of speed cushions really becomes an issue. And I know that's a large, for someone that doesn't live and uses streets to go back and forth from different destinations, I can definitely personalize that feeling. So I think one of the things I have seen and Amy, I know you're an engineer and will bring this information, but if we can communicate about the one thing we have been able to do on Murphy Road, also on Bowling, with those discussions when we were getting feedback on traffic calming, is NDOT was able to say okay in certain areas to get those flashing lights that allow someone to press the button. It does slow for that crosswalk. It does bring people's attention to that crosswalk, that there's also going. And yeah, Mr. Goosetree is talking about the major emergency vehicle. Yes, it's a collector route, and that is true. And one of the things that Ms. Birch covered earlier is that we do have EMS that consults with NDOT on what those sizes are. So you're exactly right, Mr. Goosetree. But one of the things we've seen is NDOT does take consideration, especially in these high traffic crosswalk areas. So if we can get looking at maybe in lieu of some of those speed calming or speed cushions, traffic bumps, whatever you want to call them, with layperson's terms, speed bumps, speed humps, traffic calming cushions. With those flashing lights, with the pedestrian walk street, that's a very, very helpful thing. Clearly, we'll work with parks to see any other protections that we can do with their property. Someone also lifted up, and I think it was Barry, lifted up kind of the elevated sidewalk areas from the existing locations. And then I've had it on request by a few neighbors. So we've got it in the queue already with NDOT for this area to have the speed trailer, which is that we've got a few speed trailers that we use countywide that reflect the speed that you're going. So we've got that in the queue for a few areas and a few streets in this area. But on Cherokee Park, I have seen that really help, or Cherokee Boulevard. That was one of the solutions we came. Whether or not it does the ultimate thing, it really does. It seemed to be something that folks wanted. And then we've got another couple of comments in the chat as well. If you can take a moment there, Amy, I can read them aloud if you're not able.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll read them aloud so everyone can see. There was the comment about the major emergency vehicle route, and that's true. And then question, has the design of the cushions improved so that they are not damaged and need to be replaced every year from the snow plows? We're still using the same product, NDOT is, and for the most part, they're not, that to my knowledge, damaged frequently. There are some occasions when it happens. They are not removed, in winter and stored and put back. But the NDOT's snowplow operators, they're really great at what they do. They have the speed cushions kind of programmed into their routes. They know where they are. The signage that we install with the speed cushions also helps identify the streets with speed cushions so that the drivers don't pick them up or lift them up with the snowplow. So that has improved as far as NDOT's coordination about cushions and snow routes, but we're still using the same products that are drilled into the pavement.
Bellmead gets this unseen.
But yeah, so this is what I thought was true. We currently have a button-triggered lights on either side of the crosswalk and Estes, alongside signage indicating it's a state law to yield to crosswalk traffic, and the lights are routinely ignored by all drivers of all ages and family size and all at all times of day. Okay, well, this is helpful to me because I could have sworn there was the flashing lights there when I went and checked the street out recently. So yes, compliance it could be an issue, and so maybe there's some more improvement or enhancement that can be incorporated through this program to achieve some better compliance by drivers.
And I think
we have
Lisa Boyle, you're on the phone.
You're welcome to speak.
Lisa, Lisa,
If you are able to unmute, and I'm not sure how you do that on the phone. I have dialed on from the phone before, so let me see how you do that. Oh, I think that was you. I think we heard you.
I have something to say.
Absolutely. Let's see if we can get Lisa to dial in, and
Is
then
that
we've
me?
got, yeah, there you are. And
Sure,
then
Lisa.
we've
Oh
got
my
Mark, and then
goodness.
we've got,
Thank
yeah.
you. Thank you so much. I was going crazy, not understanding how to talk. Okay, thank you so much for this. This is so helpful. I just wanted to say my house is at 609 Estes, which is, you know, kind of midway. And it is true that the traffic really speeds up along the midpoint between Woodlawn and Woodmont. And I am extremely concerned about the children in the park. But I think that is a different issue than the speed up in the middle. My issue is that I can barely see coming out of my driveway. I can hardly see traffic coming, and it's coming so fast. So the mailboxes really block my view of seeing if there's a car coming. And so it's kind of just like
That's why this
I have to just say a prayer and pull out. So if they were going slower, I think I wouldn't be as terrified as I am. And also, you know, a number of us cross the road to go on walks in the neighborhood. And because there's no sidewalks, you know, we're just darting across the road. And so with that high speed in between Woodlawn and Woodmont, it is really scary. And I know my neighbor's dog got hit, and we have toddlers on our street that are crossing with their parents to go on walks all the time. So I'm just really worried about that interior speed on Estes. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Brenda,
I think we have another hand up.
Brenda, I have one more.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. I was like, I know this isn't really my meeting. I know it's Amy's and your all's meeting. But I know Mr. Mahler, Barry, and then we have an additional question. So Barry, you and Mr. Mahler are next, I think, and then we'll make sure we address the additional comment that's in the box.
Thank you, Brenda. I just think that we need to have speed cushions all along the street. It would help alleviate the speeding from Woodmont Park to Woodlawn. That's where most of the speeding occurs. In the middle of the night, I can hear cars going 50, 60, 70 miles an hour or something like that. I mean, I don't know that they are going that fast, but it sure sounds like it. And during the daytime, from the second that they pass Woodmont Park until they get to Woodlawn, they're traveling at a very high rate of speed. I've offered to have my driveway set up because I'm right dead end into Westmont. I've offered the police department my driveway for a speed trap, and I would enjoy watching that because I think they could make their quota within a week. And so that's all I have to say. I'm all for the speed cushions.
You know, Barry, I think we've got a new commander since the last time we coordinated with the last commander. So I'll get you on the email and that offer with the new commander.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'll make sure to do that. And I know Mr. Mahler wanted to get in, but also looks like we've got Adam and Lydia Kraus who also wants to chat, and then we'll make sure address Erwin Vennick's comment as well. So Mr. Mahler, I think you were next in line if you want to make sure you wanted to.
Thank you,
unmute.
Brenda.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brenda. And Barry, definitely support having a police car in your driveway. We may agree to disagree on the speed cushions. The number of 7 in particular is daunting. One thing I didn't mention before, when I reviewed the literature on this and how improvements in injuries are achieved largely by diverting traffic to other routes. The problem of bicyclists has not been addressed in the literature,
Right.
and Amy referred, which appreciated very much, about having a pole to protect when that's feasible. I ride my bicycle, and I do ride on Estes, and I can tell you that 7 cushions will be hazardous for me and other bicyclists on Estes. There's not enough. The road isn't wide enough for that. You wind up getting diverted into potholes, or people trying to avoid the speed bumps and going into your path. There are things which are hazardous for bicyclists, and some of the alternatives, with particularly addressing issues with the park and having appropriate surveillance that we've already talked about, that I'm not going to revisit, but we want to make sure we address the problems and minimize creating other problems, unintended consequences. And I will tell you, the literature hasn't addressed that, but it's real for bicyclists as well. Thank you.
I think that's a great point. Amy, can you lift up, is there anything with the width of this tree, especially what Mr. Mahler and others have already lifted up too with some of the constraints, but I don't know if I've heard specifically addressed around the cyclists, especially with the width of the street. And then Adam and Lydia, I think it's probably Lydia that's on the phone. If you can hang tight with us, we'll make sure we get you to be able to speak as well.
So yes, Councilmember and Mr. Mueller, I hear your comment about the cyclist and how speed cushions affect them. That is something that we do look at, particularly when there is a bike lane on the street, and how to protect that so that the bike lane, that drivers are not driving into the bike lane. But an instance like this where it doesn't have a bike lane, and so it's cyclists and are sharing the street with the vehicles, that is something that I guess we need to think about. I think that my thought is more about how much gap is there between the edge of the outside edge of a cushion and the edge of the pavement, and making sure that there's maybe some minimum width there that would accommodate a cyclist, but then understanding that then that puts you outside of the lane essentially, and drivers may be trying to go around you. So it's a great comment and concern, and I appreciate you bringing it up. I don't have a solution answer for you there, but we'll take this into consideration.
Amy, is that something you could bring back to NDOT? I mean, we know that narrowing from what I have learned, I am definitely not an engineer, and I'm thrilled to not be over this program and not be a decision maker on this, and that you all are the property owners there on this street are the decision makers and not me. So I'm thrilled about that. But I'm really, really interested too. As what I have learned is that anytime there's a narrower field, a visual field, so on straight streets, speed up. Cars go faster when and that's just reality. And so if there's a way to bring back to NDOT staff on the width of the street and what we're working with for any type of those delineators. Sometimes those delineators are also, I've heard feedback where people think they are ghastly and horrible. It's like, so you can always hear very strong opinions on that. But if there's a way to look at the street, clearly we want sidewalks, and I think that's a continued thing to make sure we're not ignoring that. I don't mean to be dismissive in my comments there. That is just the reality. That would be number one, what we want, to work within the right of way and extend that right of way to achieve that. That's a longer term solution that that is out of the scope of this particular program, but one that we should not ignore in advancing. So if you can make sure we make note of that. I do want to make sure that, but anyways, if we can think about any ways, I mean, I know we've got, but anyway, just making sure we're considering that cyclist aspect there. I know we're trying to do, we've got more space on bowling to address that in certain spaces, but then bowling decreases. So it's another area I've been in active conversations with neighbors over there. But Lydia, are you still with it? Amy, do you want to respond to that, or I want to make sure before we lose Lydia? Okay.
I think we can move on.
Okay.
Lydia.
Can you hear us?
Hello.
Yes.
Yay!
Here's our
Oh, yay! It's
toddler.
both of you,
This is the
Adam and Lydia.
toddler
Okay,
we want to
wonderful.
protect.
Hi, John.
Hi.
I wanted to say hello and thank you for putting this together. I know it takes a lot of time and effort and details to make a project like this happen. Obviously, we are neighbors, well, I guess of everybody, but of Barry and Lisa. And so we kind of have very similar experiences when we're trying to, okay.
All right.
Sorry about that. And so here.
We'll take some turns as we both have
We'll
questions.
take turns because we both have something to say.
No, this is the real life.
And
So thank you so much for not hiding that.
Yes,
It's
very
wonderful.
real life, and we're both, we're pretty good at tag teaming, but he's really tempted to push the buttons on the iPad right now too. So basically, just wanted to thank Lisa for her comments and kind of reiterate those were similar concerns to us. I did have like a point/question, about the data. And so, I know that they were saying the average speed is about 37. I would like to just question/comment, from my living experiences, it's very different at different times of the day, which is probably similar to many parts of this county. But I feel like this specific piece of Estes is very influenced by the school traffic. And so when there are tons of cars and whatnot, it's, much slower. But when it's not that 8 or 3, or maybe it's 3 to 5 or whatever, and it's fairly empty, which is great when my family's like running across, we're very close to where Westmont and Estes tees. That's where we, when it's empty, that's where the temptation lies. And, someone mentioned the teenagers. I think it happens a lot, but that's when the speeding temptation in our experience
Totally
happens. So
accelerates.
that's why, and which is why we're, why we're here and applied for this. And so, I hope that that's really been taken into consideration, because I think those speed differences are quite contrast. And sometimes, like, I was kind of surprised 37 was the 80% average or whatnot. And I kind of wonder, and then, I think I also appreciated our neighbors' comments about the park versus, I do think that's a separate issue as well. A lot of times we're not parking, but, on busy days it is, there's maybe 5 parking spots, but if you have 20 families there, they're just kind of parking alongside the road or across the street. So that area is definitely, the whole stretch is an important project, but I think there's sub issues within it. And that's what we wanted to say. And I think my husband wanted to say something too, but he's taking care of our little precious Joy who's past his bedtime.
Amy, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Is it my understanding that from the center line of the street to 25 feet on either side, the city has access to that?
Not necessarily. I think the right of way changes for different streets, different situation.
The reason why I was asking is for bike lanes. I agree that traveling on a bike on Estes is very dangerous. In fact, I see it all the time in front of my house. And if we had bike lanes on either side of our either side of the edge of the street, that would help alleviate the safety issue for people on bicycles. And I'm totally with Lydia about the speeding on the street. It seems to be totally excessive when there's not a traffic buildup. That's all.
Thank you. We will measure the width of the pavement in the field and make sure that we understand what possibilities there are, if there are any, that we could, tighten the lanes to create. I don't think we have enough width for a bike lane, but
Yeah.
certainly, open to looking at it. But widening the pavement is outside of the scope of this this project. We couldn't widen to add bike lanes, is what I'm
Okay.
saying, within this project. But it's something that could be requested to NDOT to put it on a plan and see about doing that sometime in the future. But yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And Amy, is there anything else you wanted to address to the data portion? I think Ms. Bell lifted this up at the earlier part of this meeting, and then Lydia has also lifted up regarding the MBA or other traffic, these time, these particular between 3 and 5 or between these sites. So I don't know if you want to just further in and address that.
Yeah, I mean, what I'll say to it is, I think the physical measures are installed 24/7, and so that they are able to address speeding at all times of day and achieve the slower speed when very little traffic is on the street, or when it, and as well as when it's a little bit heavier traveled during peak hours. And again, to touch base on the speed data and the 37 miles per hour being our measured 85th percentile speed. I hear you. It could be a little higher than that, maybe. But 15% of the traffic's going higher, and that could be a few that are going 50 miles an hour or something. I hope not.
Speed limit's 30.
Certainly not appropriate. But
speed limit's
yeah,
30.
so I'm not surprised by the 37. It seems similar to streets of this characteristic. I'll say. So there's a couple more questions in the chat I think I'd like to speak to.
And I will, before you get through that, I do want to address, Erwin Vinnick also just talked about using, earlier in the chat, if drivers routinely ignore the button trigger light at the crosswalk, is it possible to have a license plate reader recording drivers who ignore the button trigger light at the crosswalk? You do have the ability, with permission outside of the right of way, to do a privately owned license plate reader. The state actually prohibits LPRs being used for traffic enforcement in the sense of being able to do tickets. So there are certain limitations to what license plate readers can be utilized for when it comes to wanting to there used to be in certain jurisdictions across the state, when someone ran a traffic light, they would take a picture of that license plate and you get a speeding ticket, or you get a ticket for maybe violating either the speed limit or others. So the state actually has a prohibition on that. We do have the authority, but no contract approved by a vendor, as MMPT hasn't brought forward a contract for certain right-of-ways that would be used for or right of way, such as the traffic lights, like license plate readers for that. So we don't have access for that, and that data gets utilized for larger crimes to track plates. So I just wanted to kind of lift that up. There's a couple of things going on there with what state law allows for those type of uses, and that what you can do as a private citizen, you actually can. But someone does have a question about the voting process. Susanna, why are only the Estes neighbors allowed to vote on this? If you'll talk through that, and then looks like Adam is now back, and then we've got another question as well. But if you'll walk through what the threshold is for voting. The owners are only allowed, so if you're a long-time renter, you also aren't allowed to vote. So there's a lot of kind of things around that.
Yes, and so to do that, we can come back to this slide and more discussion, but I'm gonna maybe move through some of these slides and then we'll come back to questions, because this is going to answer some of those questions, I believe. So I'm showing on our slides here our program flow chart, and it starts with the application. Residents get together and apply for traffic calming for a street. And from there, NDOT takes all the streets that have applied for traffic calming and does our prioritization and selection process that I spoke about earlier, the data collection, and then identifies the streets with the greatest need that scored the highest in our prioritization. And then we move into our neighborhood meeting phase. And that's what we're doing now. We're here to get some feedback from the neighborhood, make sure we inform everyone about the project, the program, the next steps, and so forth. And we'll talk about the ballot as well. And then from there, we typically will move into our more detailed design plan, taking in the feedback that we've received on the preliminary draft that we share, refine that, do our field review, detailed design. It's several pages long, so it stretches the whole street, and it has a lot of information about exactly where the device would be installed and distance from driveways and so forth. So just more information. And from there, especially for this street, we will have a second neighborhood meeting to talk about the design in more detail. You'll be able to view that more detailed design, not this cartoon that I've shown thus far. And that meeting will be advertised the same way through meeting mailers. We will coordinate that with our applicant contacts, the time and date, as well as the council member. I know that she's an excellent council member, and we'll advertise the meeting as well, share that information to make sure that everyone can be notified as possible to be involved in that process. So then we will discuss any modifications, changes to the plan, and so forth, and go again with our next steps, which the next step after that is the online ballot. And those ballots are mailed also to the property owners, and they include unique IDs, so make sure we don't have duplicate votes that skew the results. It's a 6-week window for the voting, and if 66% of the votes received are in favor of the project, then the project moves forward into construction. And that, after the vote closes, that's still an 8 to 10 month period for NDOT to order the materials and get the project installed. So more info on the balloting and then more info on the ballot zone. The balloting, again, it's an online ballot. There's a QR code printed on a postcard that gets mailed, and has the unique ID again to keep us from having the duplicate votes. It's a 6-week window of time to vote. So when you get your postcard in the mail, go ahead and vote right then, so that you don't misplace the card or forget it, because 6 weeks surprisingly goes by fast. And then, but respondents can vote yes or no. So a non-responsive vote is not a no vote. I want to make that clear. So, in order to participate in the vote, you have to vote, but you can vote yes or no for the project. But if 66% of the respondents vote, so it's similar to election, if 66% of the respondents vote yes, then the project will move forward. On this postcard, there's also a phone number for NDOT's project manager. So if someone receives this postcard and unfamiliar with the project or can't vote online for some reason, then we can help you out. And then at the top of the online ballot, there's a link that takes you to all of our plans, our traffic calming plans that are posted. So the Estes road plan would be there. So you can view the plan in advance of the vote. So everyone can be educated on exactly what they're voting for or on. And then our ballot zone is kind of highlighted in blue. It's a little hard to see, but it's essentially, it's all the residential properties, churches, and schools each get one vote. And it's only the properties that abut the affected right-of-way are eligible to vote. So it's not entirely highlighting all the properties, but the lighter black lines with the property lines is what we're talking about are eligible to vote. So vacant properties are not eligible, and businesses are not eligible. But our goal, NDOT's goal, is to make sure that everyone knows about the project, is aware of it. If you're eligible to vote, receive a card. So if you, you know, believe that you should have received it but didn't, please reach out. I have my contact information on the following slide. But we want to make sure that everyone that has an ability to vote, that's eligible to vote and is aware of the project. So you can, we're going to come back to questions in just a second, but I just wanted to put my information here so you can have my contact information, Amy Birch at birchtransportation.com, and NDOT's email address, NDOT.TrafficCalming.Nashville.gov. And we have an Engaged Nashville page set up. This is another way to give feedback outside of this meeting. So you can go to that page and find out information about the project, status of it, when the next meeting is going to be, which will also be advertised through postcards. But that information will be there when it's scheduled. And but you can also leave comments on the project there. So let me go back to questions here.
Amy, I know we've got Adam back here. I think, and the reason I lift that up, not to ignore, because we've got some great questions. Jay Barnett has some questions, and Charlene may have got a question answered, but we'll reiterate that, and Denise also in the chat. But it looks like the baby was put down, so I just want to make sure we've got Adam back here and I can see his face. So if you all are okay with that, to allow him to speak, and we'll make sure we get these questions.
At least he's calmed down anyway, but thank you everybody for putting this together. Definitely well thought out, and really appreciate you all coming together. Looking at the map, and I might chalk it up for walking over to the park and around the neighborhood, probably one of the most of the street. I think it was probably 300 days last year. But so to reiterate what everybody was saying, around the stop sign, around the light are definitely the quietest. I do think it's overkill. That first C on the right is a little close to the stop sign. I think the first C on the left is a little overkill, so I might be duplicating some things. But the C between the Westmont on the right and the C on the Westmont on the left, that is extremely. I had an argument, a nice argument with my wife over which room of our house was going to be the baby room. And we have our house in the front, and we have a room in the front and a room in the back. And I adamantly pushed for the room in the back because of the noise. It is a race car, out there, and it's really quick. Especially when it gets to Westmont, some people turn left or some people turn right on the Westmont, but crossing that street 300 times out of the year and backing out of it an additional, another 1,000 times, it gets really fast by the time you're at Westmont. So during school season or when school's in session, which I think my wife mentioned, traffic is a lot slower. But the periods of time when you are trying to, like maybe at lunch, take a walk at lunch, or you're trying to do anything with a toddler. And also, I should say, our next door neighbors also have a toddler. And so we have 2 toddlers right there at Westmont, when it's actually probably one of the fastest spots. And we have, I mean, 20 walkers, and apparently I didn't realize we had a biker, but maybe we can alternate and make it similar to the Westmont Park, and have like a raised speed bump that is a crosswalk. That's similar to having a blinking light when somebody pushes the button. We all know that we walk on each other's lawns and set each other's rings off doing it. And so if we can peacefully mitigate, I understand I'm a biker as well. I enjoy biking. So I want to take that into account, but it is absurd that 15% does not feel like 15% of the actual population. It probably feels like 50% of the population. When people are gone at work and they're, coming in and at 8 to 5, and they might get out of their house and go for a walk one day a week, or maybe they bike one day a week on Sunday. It's not there. But when you're out there every day and you see it every day, and someone's dog gets hit and has to go to the emergency room for a couple $1,000s, when our dog almost got hit and ran down the street, I mean, it's terrible, and you don't want that. 37 miles per hour is almost 25%. Let's put that in perspective, over the speed limit.
Yeah.
That at 70 miles an hour is going 90, and so it's it's difficult.
That's a great point. We're talking about this 37 miles per hour, but when the speed limit is 30, the percent of traffic that's going over the speed limit is much higher than 15%.
I was sharing that with someone earlier today in anticipation for this evening, that every year I go to the pedestrian memorial. And it is a moment in time where we hear from family members who lost their loved ones crossing a street, and things that people have already lifted up, things that we should be doing, can be doing, creating these sidewalks, creating an entire thing that's outside of this one particular program, right? So not ignoring all the additional things we should be doing. But if attending that was mandatory, I think that would be something that would wake us all up. And I think there's a couple of other questions here I don't want to divert the attention from, but I hear from folks like this. And I also live with a husband who doesn't like speed cushions, right? So it's like, I understand.
Don't get me wrong, the ones on Sharondale have me going crazy every time I'm trying to go to the airport, but
I know.
It's fine.
But we also know the additional things it does to actually, and so I think the feedback tonight about the locations for some of these speed cushions that you just lifted up, Adam, and others here, of like, okay, how do we protect these bike lanes? I mean, these are the things that working within what we have access to with this program is so incredibly important. That real life crossing, and then some of the additional questions to pivot, not to avoid if there's any direct feedback to Adam here, Amy, you want to give, but Jay Barnett and Denise here in the chat talk about ask the other questions that we all always want to know, right? Those additional. Adam, thank you so much for spending your time. I don't know if that was a wave by, if you had another question.
Yeah, I think he's actually going up. Hold
on. But just the what? Oh, good night.
I'll say that
what
I've
that
noted
impact is for side streets. So before we get off this call, I think those are the last couple of things to make sure we understand the impact on side streets as well.
One other thing to highlight really quick. When we were redoing the water line, people were cutting through Wilson, and there were definitely several accidents.
Yeah.
There were almost several accidents because the people that are cutting through are not from here, and so they thought that everybody had a four-way stop at Wilson and Westmont, and they don't. And
they do not.
And so there were several accidents, if not almost accidents, that happened during that period of time. So it's
you're right.
Yeah, it's something that's a intersection that needs to be addressed.
Yeah,
Definitely. It
needs to be a
it
four-way
just needs to
stop.
be a four-way stop.
Right. It does. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. Amy.
Sorry, that was just one other thing I just wanted to highlight. So we
Yes.
did get like a speed bump while they were doing construction. And so we kind of got we understood, wow, it's so much quieter, you know, and it's just something to consider. I don't think Crestmont really got as much cut through, but maybe they did. Seemed more like kids going to school.
Amy and
Um,
Brenda, thank you for everything.
you're
And sorry,
welcome.
thank you.
Okay, I want to answer these last questions. So I know we're getting kind of late in the evening. A question about or comment that drivers will look for other ways to get around the cushions, and they'll find their way to Crescent, Clearview, and Wilson. And you know, we don't have a lot of like concrete data on how much traffic might shift or would shift. It really depends on the network and the surrounding alternate routes that may exist. And so, you know, I can't really speak to how much, because I know Denise had a question about how much traffic would move to other streets. There may be some, but again, that's not our goal. Our goal is to reduce speeding on this street and others, and not to impact other streets. So, you know, what I've heard is that maybe this is too many cushions, and maybe we could remove some, and that might keep it from being too intense for drivers. So we'll be looking at that as we, you know, refine the plan. Is, you know, are the ones on the ends too much, too close, and do that, because we definitely don't want to install something that's so hard for drivers to you know, go over all the time and feel like they want to find a different route, because that's not really what we're trying to do. Will the ballot, this was probably answered, but will the ballot be a yes or a no, or will there be options? It's a yes or a no, and you're voting on the plan that is posted and that we uh, design and put together and post online, and you'll be able to see it when you're voting. So it's a yes or a no. There's not going to be an alternative option, but I'll say that if a ballot if it doesn't pass, if we don't achieve 66% votes in favor of the project, then NDOT will put together a alternate plan, a plan B, and it will not include vertical measures, but it might include radar feedback signs, some other markings, things like that.
Well,
And
when
we'll
the
move
ballot,
that forward.
when the ballot is sent out, will you make it clear that there are, whether it's 7 or 5 speed cushions planned, rather than making somebody go to the plan? Will you say that?
We have not done that before, but I will get you an answer at our next meeting. I don't think that would be too much of an issue.
That
We
would
do
be
kind of
that
use
would be appreciated,
standard
just
language.
because of the demographics of our neighborhood. I can assure you the reason that there are more people on tonight are tech problems with our age group. So that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Yes,
And
thank you. Also, can you hear me? It's
Yes.
Lisa.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to say that I think this call brought up something that I hadn't considered before, which could go a very long way to alleviate the mid-section speed, which, as Adam said, you know, we can hear. It's like a speedway. That's no 37 miles an hour when you can hear it like that. So I was just thinking that because we don't have sidewalks, we, on our side of the street where Adam and Lydia are, where their neighbors with a small child are, where Barry and David are, and where I am, for us to go to the park, because there are no sidewalks, we have to cross Estes and go on up Westmont to the quiet streets to walk to the park. If there was a stop and a crosswalk at Westmont, that would definitely slow people down, and it would enable us, and especially the parents with children, to walk across safely.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I agree. A three-way stop right there would be great. I mean, just to go out and get your mail at the
Yeah.
mailbox, Amy, you have
100%.
to, like, dodge, look both ways before you open your mailbox. It's sometimes it's always scary. What if I tripped off the
Yes.
curb?
Yeah.
Or just putting our trash out is
I
terrifying.
know. It's because I
Oh my
recall
gosh.
how many, like
The
some
moment
of
my
the
trash
first
bins in the middle of the street.
engagement I
Yeah.
have from many of you is because just the danger you feel of rolling your trash can out
Yeah,
because of the fear of getting hit
yeah.
by the speeding traffic. So that makes a lot of sense. And I think Mr. Mahler also had his hand raised at one point before we leave the call, Amy. I know we're going late into the evening, and we'll
Yeah.
have a second call with an updated, and so we'll do the same advertisements. Typically, the best way to see these are online. If folks are having, I can host a watch party where I'm hosting everyone either at my home or wherever, so I can control the, help with the tech. So there's a lot of ways we can do this if we get some feedback there. Because I do know having the visual on the screen is very, very helpful. But I know that can be very, can also be challenging for some folks. So
Yeah.
if anyone wants to reach out, I know everyone here is good on email. So reach out to me if you have a problem.
Thank
That's
you.
never a problem.
Councilmember, we do hybrid meetings as well. So, done them at the library, Green Hills Library, or other community centers. So that's an option for the second meeting, to have people be able to join online or in person if you would like.
Most
So.
wonderful. Yeah, I know it'll take you a few weeks to gather this input, to go back, look at things. And so the second meeting won't be immediate. So we will look at those different options too. I think that will be really helpful. But I think Mr. Mahler, there may have been someone else too, but I saw his hand raised, Amy, and you probably saw that too.
Yep.
Hi. I'm sorry, Mark Mahler again. Just briefly, in response to Denise's question, yes, there's variation in the amount of diversion, but having reviewed the literature on this, one thing is clear, that there is diversion, and it's the major impact of speed cushions on the beneficial effect on injuries. I can provide some references on that if people are interested. There was a study in Grosse Pointe, Michigan, for example, where that was looked at, but it's been pretty consistent. And in this particular neighborhood, it can be predicted, where those of us who've lived here for a while, where that will be, and it will be as in some of the areas that have been discussed here. But so yes, there will be diversion of traffic substantially. But thank you so much, Brenda and Amy, for this very informative, very useful, and I think a very productive exchange. But thank you so much.
Right.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Have I missed anything? I think we had some comments about some speed cushions in East Nashville causing some diversion.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I'm
Mr.
recommending
Barnett
that.
lifted that up. I think we may have gotten questions answered. You have Amy's. Feel free to email me. If I think I respond to everyone. I spend about 30 hours a week trying to reply to emails. If I've missed you, I apologize. But I can make sure, if you want to reach me because you don't have Amy's email, even though it's right there on the screen, I will make sure to get you connected directly to her or anyone else. And then we will get this, hopefully we can maintain some of this warm weather for a park walk with park staff to talk through some of those other solutions that can hopefully marry with this as well. And I think I must have interrupted someone. I apologize. So I'll stop talking. So I really appreciate everyone being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I do too. So I just want to close out if I can and say that I've been taking notes and hearing your questions and comments. And so what we're going to be doing is some field work and kind of refining this plan and taking in the feedback that we've received. So I appreciate everyone's time this evening and thoughtful comment. It's really great to work with such an engaged group. So we'll be putting that plan together. Once it's ready, I'll be reaching out to a council member to begin that planning of the next meeting. So you can probably expect that in the next 2 months or so to have that next meeting. And that's what we'll be targeting. And I look forward to, refining the plan and working with you all moving forward. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you all. Thank you for spending your evening with us.
Yes.
Good night.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.